All right, everyone. Milo Yiannopoulos was like shouted off of stage and run out of I guess, a speaking engagement that he was at. And they were like, oh, Nazi get out, Nazi go home. The usual, the usual very intelligent talking points of people who, I guess, don't have a firing neuron within their brain. Can I just say something here? I find this funny. The Young Turks labels Milo alt-right. He's not. He not only has he disavowed the tell. Look, he's a gay dude married to a black man. How the hell is he supposed to lead an army of Nazis or something? He's also a Zionistic individual. It just doesn't make any sense. At what point, this is the big takeaway for me, because we've seen these tactics before. We've seen the whole shout people down. You are a Nazi because I claim you're a Nazi, or you are X, Y, and Z because I claim it, and then you don't let the person rebut your point because you're so self-righteous and so dumb that you don't want them to speak at all, and you basically want to punch them and assault them and stuff. We've seen that before. The big takeaway, though, really takes off of the corporate media problem that we're seeing. We're seeing it increasingly, which is something that I figured would happen. I literally predicted this. I get tired of having to say that, but it's getting more and more of a farce. Thankfully, I think eventually they overstretch and they screw themselves in the process. They're calling Milo alt-right the same way BuzzFeed labels like Scott Adams as an MRA and like I'm a Holocaust revisionist or a kook and all of these other things. And they're usually based on nothing. If they're based on anything at all, it's almost always going to be out of context or totally dated. Like the fact that Milo is supposedly alt-right is because 2 years ago he's like, oh yeah, this new movement is sort of cool. It's like the new right. But that's before it transmogrified itself from frog shit posting basically into something that involved, actual real life activities that I guess spooked him. And of course, if Milo showed up at a Spencerite rally, he'd probably be forced out by people who are actual identitarians and they don't accept him. They don't like his views particularly. So we've got a whole bunch of people who simply, they're somewhere outside of the left, and they're not actually on the further right, that are sort of in this weird vacuous space where they just get harassed by everyone. But at what point are we going to hold so-called journalistic outlets accountable for the labels that they use? If someone says, I am not alt-right, their views are not in keeping with what is generally considered alt-right. The lifestyle that they live is far outside of what the alt-right would identify as appropriate behavior. At what point does it become clear-cut defamation for a group like the Young Turks to label them alt-right? At what point does that become so problematic that we should probably do something legally about it? At what point are the big tech firms that'll go after, some smaller user for something totally innocuous? They were mildly offensive, somebody didn't like what they said, they get a strike, they get demonetized, they get deplatformed off Twitter or something. At what point are they going to hold the Young Turks accountable by similar methods? At what point are they going to suffer from the censorship that they themselves want to enforce on others? That's my big question. It's about corporate media at that point. It's not just about Milo. Of course, Milo's been shouted down before. I'm not even a Milo fan, and I've made that clear early and often. I believe he is primarily in it for attention. He sees it as marketing. And so once he realized that the alt-right was turning into an actual on-the-ground and potentially dangerous political ideology, it's like, well, I can't support, it was cool before and I was raking in the dough, but now they're actually talking about these moralistic things that, if they took control, I'd probably be exiled to Madagascar or something. So I guess he sort of went, beyond even just being like a Posobiec new writer. Went beyond that. He went beyond sort of the alt-light of a Cernovich or something. And now he's in, I don't even know exactly what you'd label him anymore. He's vaguely libertarian in some respects. Vaguely maybe paleocon in some sense. Maybe like the non-religious version of Nick Fuentes or something like that. No, I think. At some point, we need to hold accountable people who claim to be journalists. Now, it's one thing if someone's saying, well, I think this person is a scumbag alt-leftist, or hey, I think this person is a scummy Nazi, or something, and they're just some random average fucking Joe who has a YouTube channel or something, it's a little bit different. But when you have a multi-million-dollar entity partnered with multi-billion-dollar entities that claims journalistic integrity, claims, hey, we are an actual news outlet, not a person with a webcam, not a small firm that analyzes things, not an independent off-hook website, but an actual media conglomerate. If they are making that claim to be delivering news, at what point are we going to hold them accountable for their own words? It's crazy. And then we've got, in separate news that's nonetheless quite funny and tech-related, we got Joy Reid, MSNBC, major host on MSNBC, popular figure. She was making homophobic comments years ago on her blog, and now she's attacking people and saying that she was actually hacked. Now, she apologized for the comments, but then she comes out and says when you know, the pressure doesn't ease up off of her, because stuff that you did in the past that could be seen as offensive is now basically a scarlet letter, a death sentence for your career if you're anywhere within a corporate structure that will care about your past. If you're in a business that's not a mom and pop store or self-employment, basically you have to worry about your past. The problem is people archived their blog posts, and so they're like, hey, you actually did make these comments. She apparently hired people to scrub it all. Didn't quite work. Now she's claiming that she was hacked. So you left homophobic content up on your blog despite being hacked for extended periods, but it's not really your views. But you're sorry for posting it, but it wasn't you posting it. Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense again. It's just like with Cenk, when we're talking about the Young Turks. Cenk had a blog on which there's all sorts of weird sexist stuff years ago, and people dug it out, and it was a big problem. He's still there. Well, that's rather funny, because if it was someone with an R after their name, or someone on Fox that made similar content, Cenk would say, oh, that's because the Republicans are all sexist and stuff. And yeah, a lot of them are. It's like Bill O'Reilly. People who were saying he was ham-handed and a little creepy for years and years. Well, I guess they fucking got it right now, didn't they? Meanwhile, Cenk is free to post his BS every single day. Nobody does jack shit about it. He gets priority status for his network, despite the fact that they're defaming people. This is defamation. You're calling Milo alt-right. He is clearly not. Under no reasonable circumstances could you construe that. And then they're applauding the fact. Now, I thought like Jack from Twitter, and I can't pronounce her name, from the CEO of YouTube and all these. I thought that the big tech heads had a problem with people who didn't even themselves, they didn't do anything illegal or unconscionable, they simply were like cheerleaders for it. Oh, well, you're basically a cheerleader for extremism. You're a cheerleader for something bad, therefore, at the very least, we're demonetizing you. You can't use this part of our service. You're a lesser status person. So then why do the Young Turks have priority status, huh? They keep defaming people. Why would BuzzFeed, don't they have a verified channel? They've defamed me. They've defamed Scott Adams. At what point are they going to get held to the same rules? And I'll tell you what, there will come a time at which, through public demand, they have to be. It could be related to money. It could be related to, you know, a shift in public discourse. It doesn't really matter. They'll be held accountable. Then they're all going to come out and say, woe is us, we're being abused and mistreated, and censorship is a bad thing. When it targets them, they'll have a problem with it. That's how the paradigm will end up breaking. That's, again, why do you think I keep saying, long term, I'm optimistic about the health of the internet, but we have to go through the dark ages first. But at some point, we're going to have to hold these people accountable. I find it astronomically funny, day in and day out, when I read stories that indicate that there is a large and potentially growing segment of people that self-proclaim as liberals, open-minded, tolerant, liberal individuals that actually believe that corporations can be benevolent, that actually believe that states can be benevolent enough to be trusted with denigrating the freedom of people to express themselves, that don't understand economics and don't understand why it's a bad idea to regulate the internet in any meaningful way, insofar as people are making non-criminal types of content. You'll crush the internet. You're going to lose a huge amount of money for a lot of businesses. Once they realize that, all of a sudden, they're going to become a bunch of libertarians. They're going to be, oh yeah, we were always against it, people. Trust us, we were always against censorship. The Young Turks, Cenk come out and say, no, I don't want to muzzle anyone on the right. You know, they're Nazis, but I'm going to tolerate them being Nazis. I don't want to see them punched. Once the birds come back to roost and all the shit is getting flung around in the corporate structure, all of a sudden, then it will be a problem. Then you see, it'll be a little bit like the rise of Gen X on the internet, I think, honestly. It's going to be a weird time. I can't wait to see it, by the way. It's going to be great, especially for people who are content creators. You got to get on alt tech, dude. You got to start using alt tech firms more and more. I'm glad I'm approaching 15,000 followers on both Minds and BitChute at this point. I'm going to be getting a plaque at some point from BitChute. I can't wait to show people that. Yes, it'll be an unboxing. It'll be hung behind me. Gab, I've got over 10,000 people following me. Twitter, which isn't alt tech, but growing presence there. Steam it. Keep using alt tech. Don't rely on the handful of sites. We can't. At this point, we can't because they keep coddling these people. Meanwhile, you'll notice the difference, and I pointed this out and thought it was funny. Holt came out and said, well, Media Matters video was removed from YouTube. Now, I think they restored it. I can't remember what it was on. And then BitChute chimes in, oh, it's still on BitChute. You know, Media Matters actually has a page on BitChute. Notice the difference. A group like Media Matters wants somebody like me kicked off of YouTube or at least abused, because they don't want me reaching too many people. But I don't want them kicked off or abused on BitChute. I'm the #1 uploader there. I should call for that. I think that would be very, very funny. I've made jokes about it before. I wouldn't because it's against my principles, but those of us who early and often have gotten onto alt tech consider the ramifications of that position, really, in relation to some of these groups that drag their heels, and much like they drag their heels getting online. So one of the reasons some of these sites aren't doing so well is because they're like a cable firm, a newspaper, something. They didn't establish an early internet presence. They didn't take it seriously. Like, oh, it's going to be the next fax machine. Yeah, it's cool. This internet thing is interesting. Ha ha ha. I can, say, flirt with people on IRC, but ultimately it's never going to be a big thing. Oh, how wrong they were. They're going to be wrong about alt tech as well. All things will shift. That's about all. Peace out.